product managers from Triptease talking about best price.
Hi, hello, welcome. So welcome to the Triptease talk show. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the sort of comedic talk show Between Two Ferns. Well, this is less Between Two Ferns, more like Between Two Nerds, because we are two very sort of data-obsessed product managers at Triptease, and that's kind of got a bit of an unhealthy obsession with data. But anyway, we're here to share that all with you now. And it's all about how you can have the best price everywhere, always. But before I get into that, I want to start with a bit of a story. So I'm actually staying on in Chicago after the conference for a few days with a bunch of colleagues from Triptease. And we were deciding about where we wanted to stay. And someone found this nice hotel. It was reasonably affordable. We thought, that's great. Let's see if we can find a good price for this one. So did some research, went on meta search, went on a couple of OTA sites to check what their prices were, went on the direct site. And yes, direct had a direct booking benefit, and the price was best on the hotel's website. So I thought, this is excellent. I was very smug as I went through the booking flow and hit pay now, and then the website crashed. And I wasn't presented with any information about whether or not it had gone through. I checked my banking app, nothing there. So I thought, it must have just used the wrong email or something. So I did it again, hit pay now, and it crashed again. And I thought, right, okay, I'm gonna have to call this hotel now to book this room. And then I checked my inbox and I had 2 confirmation emails. So I'd paid twice for the room. And after tearing my hair out a little bit because I'd booked a non-refundable rate twice, fortunately, of course, I remembered I'd booked direct. So I was able to just call the hotel, and eventually they were able to refund me the mistaken booking, and all was well in the world. So it had a happy ending, this story. But the reason I'm telling you this is because every single one of your guests, doesn't matter who they are, is going to do their research, and they're going to try and find the best price for your hotel. And your price is the most important factor deciding where they're going to book. So that's why we want to talk to you about having the best price everywhere, always. So what are we going to talk about? Firstly, we want to talk a little bit about pricing and how that impacts performance on Meta. We want to give you share some insights with you about how you can identify which are the undercuts that really matter. And finally, we want to talk about precision discounting in Meta and beyond, about how you can make sure you have the best price, but without giving up too much margin. But before we get into all of that, I think it'd be really helpful, John, because we get a load of questions from our customers about how it is that we're using pricing data across our products. So perhaps you could just give us a quick recap in terms of what we're doing there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll start right at the beginning. So innovative use of pricing data has kind of been core to Triptease forever, right back from the launch of parity monitoring and price checking at the beginning. And then as we launched channels like meta search, we used pricing data there and parity data there through our blackout functionality, retargeting, display retargeting, prices in ads, our price preview functionality. And ever since then, we've really kind of doubled down on it. And over the last year in particular, we've done more and more and more with pricing data. So this time last year, we were launching price matching in meta search. We've done price previewing in email and across our paid search products as well. So it really has been the year of pricing and thinking about price at Triptease.
Yeah, exactly. And you touched on a few points there where we're using pricing data in Meta specifically. And one of the common questions we get from hoteliers is around how exactly does price impact performance on Meta? Can you share anything with us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you were here last year, you probably saw me stood in front of this slide. And what we're talking about here is as your price gets better, as you go from being undercut in parity to being cheaper direct, the click-through rate, more and more guests who see your adverts will click on them and then will go onto your website to book.
Okay, and so to clarify, because this is kind of like an upper funnel improvement, if you can get more guests seeing your prices better on Meta, then that will result in kind of more clicks through to your booking engine.
Yeah, absolutely. You can reframe it the other way around as well. So if you don't, the times that you don't have the best price, guests aren't clicking on your link. If they don't click on your link, they are not on your website. If they are not on your website, they are not booking direct. They'll never book direct if they're not on your website.
Okay, so given that, clearly price is super important when it comes to Meta. So what can hoteliers do to make sure that they've got the best price on Meta and ensure more guests reach their website?
So I guess this is a list of things that you've all heard before, and everyone in this room will be doing some or all of these things around checking and monitoring, making sure that you are checking on your parity, checking on your meta listings, controlling that distribution, cracking down on those rogue OTAs when you see them, reporting violations on Google. And if you haven't spotted this big change this year, you can self-report pricing violations on Google. It's now there at the bottom of the listing. So if you see a price on an OTA that you click on and you can't find it when you get there, go back to meta search. There's a link at the bottom and press that. You can report that violation straight to Google, and they will know that somebody isn't following those rules. But and of course, we have price matching as well on meta search.
Right, okay, so price match is an interesting one because we get loads of questions from hoteliers about exactly how that works. And I think because we're going to talk a little bit about that in more detail, it'd be really helpful, Jon, if you don't mind just explaining a little bit about how that works.
Yeah, absolutely. So we know what your direct price is at any given moment on meta search. We also know what the OTA prices are too. So if we see that the direct price is being undercut by an OTA, we can adjust that down and we can show a cheaper direct price on meta search instead. Now, the way that we do that is with a strike through. So we'll cross out the old price, show that new price. And that's got the advantage of showing guests that it is a deal, that it is something extra that they can get. It also makes the listing bigger, so more people will see it. And then we repeat that on the booking engine as well. So after a guest clicks through on your booking engine, we reduce the price there, and that makes sure that we're showing the same price in meta search as we show on the booking engine, which is critical for Google's rules.
Okay, but one of the common questions we get around that is, doesn't this just mean that we're going to be discounting all the time and therefore like eating into what hoteliers are taking home at the end?
So no, we don't change the price if you've already got the cheapest direct price. We only need to intervene if you're being undercut by an OTA. Also, we only adjust the price by just enough to get you cheaper direct again. If a guest only needs a 2% discount, that's all we'll use.
Okay, but I mean, from my experience as, I work on the parity monitoring product, so I'm aware that there's all these different OTAs, especially on Meta, that are kind of like smaller OTAs. They're maybe a bit shadier. Perhaps they only exist for about 6 weeks before they magically evaporate and then you'll never see them ever again. I know that they advertise rates on Meta that are not necessarily bookable. They might not actually exist when you click through. They might change them when you land there. So do you think it's really wise to be price matching and discounting when comparing against shady OTAs like that?
So despite Google's best efforts to police those players out of the auction, they are still there. And no, like personally, I wouldn't want to price match against those. And what we've done to try and address that is we've made it totally within a hotelier's choice about who you decide to match. So you could pick just the big OTAs. You could pick to match a slightly deeper tier of OTAs. If you find you're having problems on one, you could stop matching them. The other thing we've let people control is exactly what's the maximum amount you're willing to discount. Maybe you decide you'd never be willing to reduce the direct price than more than 5%, and that's absolutely fine. You can set that up too.
Okay, great. So that's price match in a nutshell. And we launched it a year ago at DBS. So, Jon, what have we learned in the year since? And crucially, does it actually work?
It does. Of course I say that. It does work. More importantly, though, it's given me a massive data set to look at and has kept me very, very entertained. And I guess one of my favorite things to look at is these two charts here. So this is looking at what happens if we hadn't price matched on the left, and then what happens because of price matching. And this isn't quite satisfying. So without price matching, about half of the time, guests see direct channels being cheaper direct. But with price matching, we've been able to increase that. We've managed to shift more of those guests into that better funnel where they're more likely to click, more likely to reach your website, and more likely to book.
Okay, so just so I'm totally crystal clear on that, basically, if we hadn't price matched, about half the people would have seen an OTA have the better price, but having used price match, we've reduced that to a third.
Yep, absolutely. More people getting on your website as a result of that.
Okay, great. So more people seeing that your cheaper direct is great, and that results in more clicks. But do those clicks actually result in more bookings?
So they do, and we see that hotels that are using price match actually get 17% of their meta bookings coming from those price match links. So that's an increase into the total number of bookings. Broadly speaking, that happens because the click-through rate is higher. So when we show people a price match link, that has a click-through rate that is 42% higher than when we show a non-price match link.
Okay, so an increase in click-through rate is great, but to sort of play devil's advocate here, doesn't that just mean you're spending more on ads?
I mean, it does. You are going to spend more on ads, but you're using those ads to acquire really highly qualified traffic. These guests have already got it in their mind that direct has the best price and that they're getting a deal when they enter the website. Therefore, they are much more likely to convert. They're higher converting than your average guest. And in fact, we've actually seen that increases the return on ad spend. So despite the fact you spent more on ads, you're getting more money back from doing so.
Okay, so another way of thinking about it maybe is by using price match, and you can increase the number of guests who see that you're cheaper direct, you can actually get like more bang for your buck. You can make more out of your advertising budget as a result.
Yeah, absolutely. It reduces the cost of sale of the channel.
Okay, that's interesting. So those are the initial results from price match, and that's great to see that playing out in the wild. But I'm kind of thinking about, a lot has changed in the last year, and like we built price match, last year, a year and a half ago, based on research from around then. And yeah, the world has fundamentally changed since then. Like on the one hand, the pandemic is, I hope, well and truly behind us. I kind of wish I hadn't said that out loud now, but that's true, and that's a positive impact. On the other hand, we've got rising inflation, cost of living crisis around many parts of the world, and that's increasing price sensitivity on Meta because that is, the price sensitive channel. So I kind of wonder if maybe we need to kind of relook at this. So I'd quite like to run a little experiment with the room. So imagine you're booking a hotel on Meta and you see these prices. Now stand up if you would book direct in this particular case.
Just covering that.
Yeah. Good amount of you. Yeah. I mean, if you're still sat down, this might not be the right conference for you. I hate to break it to you. But yeah, it's good.
Yeah, stay up.
The intention was there. There was the hands raised as well. Now, what about in this case? Okay, you can raise your hand this time if you would still book direct. Yeah, most of you. I mean, don't forget who you're among in this particular conference, but there's most of you, yeah.
It's a safe space, you're among friends.
Yeah, I mean, unsurprisingly, most of you would still book direct in this particular case, but I'm guessing that this isn't a particularly representative sample of the general public, John. So what would the general public be likely to do if they saw those prices on Meta?
So you're right, this probably isn't a representative sample, and the results that we actually have seen over the last year is this. So this is the click-through rate on the direct channel versus your parity. And what we see here is it turns out it is no better, in fact, possibly even a bit worse to be in parity than it is to be undercut on meta search.
So this totally contradicts what you showed at the start of this talk, John. So have things really changed that much in the past year? Are you saying that being in parity is not good enough anymore?
I think that is what we are seeing within the data. Yeah, that there has been a fundamental change in how guests are behaving. And this is probably one of my biggest takeaway learnings from this year and things that surprised me as well. But we see this pretty much everywhere we look, whether we look on against different regions. This is North American data here, but if we look across all regions across the world, we see the same. It doesn't matter which OTAs we compare to, we see this same trend. I guess it's kind of it's quite fun to kind of hypothesize a bit about what's driving this. Maybe it might be that people are much more price sensitive at the moment and they're shopping around harder, they're encountering other prices. It might be the convenience, it might be the ease of booking on OTAs. I'm reminded of your story of the website crashing, or there's been quite a lot of change in the OTA space as well. So the One Key program on Expedia brings to mind. So maybe guests are seeing two prices that are the same, but knowing full well that they're going to get loyalty points worth 10% of that stay, and that can contribute to a family holiday later this year.
I mean, I'll be completely honest, I do find this quite hard to believe, because surely if all other things were equal, if the OTA and direct have the same price, then surely many guests would still choose to book direct.
Well, I guess with things like that happening, it's not entirely equal. There are those advantages of booking on an OTA that people might be thinking about a lot more now than they were previously.
Okay, so clearly the importance of having the best price on Meta has never been more apparent, and that's ultimately what we're here to try and spread the message about. But I guess my kind of thinking around that is like, what does it actually mean to have the best price on Meta? Like, what is the most relevant price for you to have? Because we all know that not all undercuts are equal. A $20 undercut is not the same as a $1 undercut. And if Booking.com are undercutting you, that's going to impact direct in a completely different way to if a random OTA you've never heard of is undercutting you. So I think probably we need to go a little bit deeper on the data, John, to kind of work out what's going on.
Yeah, and maybe the best place to start is having a bit of a look at the lay of the land in North America. So what we're looking at here on the left is who guests see having the best price. And to start with here, I've compared direct with the two biggest OTAs, Expedia and Booking.com, and we can see that the direct channels got the best price just over half the time. If we then add in all the other OTAs, all of those smaller ones as well, we can see that that number really reduces because those minor OTAs have actually got, or appear to have, the best price a lot of the time. And that reduces the share that both direct and the major OTAs have that best price.
Yeah, and if any of you are interested in running this kind of analysis on your own data, come and find me in the pit, which is the like sunken coaching area out there. I've got a tool which can pull in meta parity data for any hotel in the world. So it doesn't matter if you're a TripTease customer or if you're not. I can get this data for you and we can run through this analysis. And yeah, I can recommend you some actions based on that. And if you've forgotten what I look like, there is a big picture of my face on the screen, which I always find quite weird. But yeah, going back to your analysis, John. Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention, that is after this session. So 4 till 5 today in the pit, after the coffee break, after this session, I'll be down there. And I'll also be down there tomorrow, 11 till 12. That's the plan. So come and find me then. It's ad hoc and you can just walk in anytime, you don't need to book. Okay, so yeah, back to the analysis. So it looks like those smaller OTAs, they're responsible for like a hell of a lot of undercuts, but do those undercuts actually matter?
But the way that I've been looking into this is looking at the click-through rate on the direct channel. So seeing how that changes depending on who's got the best price. So if we start here thinking about what is the click-through rate on direct when direct is the cheapest channel, we see that the average click-through rate there is 4.5%. Now, when you're being undercut by one of those minor OTAs, we see that that click-through rate reduces ever so slightly. There is a change, but it's not enormous. It does make an impact, but not the biggest. However, if we start looking at when Booking.com or when Expedia have got the cheapest price and they are undercutting the direct channel, that's where we start to see those really big drops in the click-through rate on the direct channel.
Okay, so just to summarize, yes, those minor OTAs do impact click-through, but not by nearly as much as when Booking and Expedia are undercutting you on Meta.
No, because when Booking.com and Expedia are undercutting you, you're losing about 1/3 of your guests to those OTAs. And if we think again about this chart from the previous slide, we think about how often that's happening. Booking and Expedia are beating the direct channel almost half the time. So if we take those two things, add them together, what happens is you're actually leaving about 20% of your direct bookings on the table in times that those major OTAs have got a better price than you.
That's a substantial amount of revenue to be leaving on the table.
It is, yeah. And Andrew, I know you've been looking at this too, and looking at the size of the undercuts and how that changes the picture.
Yes, and I apologize to everyone's eyes. When you see this chart initially, it's going to look very scary, but I will talk you through it. So what I've been looking at here is how click-through rate through to the direct channel, which is what we've been talking about this whole time, changes depending on the size of the price difference between direct and the OTA. So taking the initial starting point here is the center of this chart where the size of the difference is 0, i.e. you're in parity. You can see that the click-through rate, which is plotted on the y-axis, is about 3%. Now, everything on the right of this, in this shaded red area, that is basically where you're being undercut. And you can see as you move right from that center line, the click-through rate kind of trends downwards until maybe around 10%, when you're being undercut by about 10%, and then it kind of levels off. But there's quite a clear trend downwards from being in parity to being when you're being undercut in terms of your click-through rate.
So what we're seeing here, if I'm right, is that it is much worse to be undercut by 10% than it is to be undercut by 2%.
Exactly, which kind of makes sense, right? That follows a bit of logic. What I think is really interesting with this chart, though, is what happens on the left-hand side. So as you increase the amount that you are cheaper than the OTAs, actually you don't really see any change in the click-through rate. I mean, it's already quite a lot better than when you're being undercut, but it stays pretty constant actually, regardless of how large how much cheaper you are than the OTAs.
So it's in this case, it's not better to be 10% cheaper direct. It's the same as just being 2% cheaper direct.
Yeah, exactly. There's no tangible benefit to being that much cheaper than the OTAs. And I think it's really interesting because I know a lot of hoteliers will use meta-specific rate plans or discounts or whatever that means you're actually substantially cheaper than the OTAs all the time, but you actually don't need to be. And potentially you're leaving revenue on the table by over-discounting.
And I guess that's where kind of like the price match precision discounting comes in. You can just be 1% cheaper and not always try to be 10% cheaper.
Right, which is one of the massive benefits of price matching on Meta. But not all guests come from Meta. And what are we going to do about those guests? In fact, I ran the numbers the other day. It's something like 93% of searches on your booking engine didn't originate from Meta. And that accounts for maybe on average about 10% of your bookings. So they do convert quite well. But we know that about a third of these guests are going to leave your site because they're able to find a better price elsewhere. And that's a real problem that we'd like to solve. And I'm wondering, Jon, maybe you've got an answer for us.
So yeah, this really has been what we've been thinking about and working on for the last year or so. And I'm absolutely delighted to be able to kind of share some news with you today around the launch of our on-site price matching feature. This is what we've been working on over the last few months. We are going to take the same approach here that we've taken within MetaSearch, and we're going to automatically adjust down the price that the direct channel has in order to get you back into beating those OTAs and be able to do that for all of the guests on site, not just those coming from MetaSearch.
Okay, so this is basically taking all the benefits we just talked about with price matching on Meta, but applying that across every single guest that ever reaches your booking engine and making sure that we're able to show them the best price, try and retain that booking, but do so in a way that doesn't eat into your margin too much by just discounting the precise amount that's required to beat those OTAs.
Yeah, absolutely. So we want this to increase your on-site conversions, getting those guests more likely to book direct, less likely to leave that website. It's exactly the same precision discounting approach. So you choose which OTAs you want to match. You decide how much the maximum amount is you're willing to discount by, and we will only adjust the prices when we need to and by the minimal amount required to get you back into parity and beat those OTA prices. And by doing that, we can show every guest, regardless of where they've come from, we can show them that you've got that best price and we can show them that you've got it on that booking engine at time of booking. If you've got your phones ready, there is a QR code coming. So while you're all here in the room, we really want to extend out the invite to you all to join us in this launch. We're looking for people to be in our alpha launch cohort. And if you are able to take a little grab of this, it'll take you to a survey. You can leave your name and details there. There's a couple of questions, but we'd like to, as you're here today with us in Chicago, we really want to get you as the first people using this feature. I would absolutely love to have you join us. Likewise, I will be around, and please do feel free to come and talk to me, ask us any questions about what we're doing and how you'd be able to help us. I hope everyone's got that QR code. I think this will be up later at the end of the talk as well. Our aim here is we want to have that best price everywhere. We want everyone to see it, regardless of whether that's on display, in email, in paid search, on the website, on the booking engine, in MetaSearch. We really want to complete our picture of showing guests that direct has the best price all of the time.
So there we go. That's pretty much it. So to summarize, firstly, we pointed out that being undercut by major OTAs like Booking.com will impact your success on Meta far more than the kind of random.coms, the rogue OTAs. We've shown you that precision discounting versus OTAs on Meta will maximize your margin, but still maximize your click-through rate. And finally, we've shown you that with on-site price match, we should be able to ensure that all your guests are able to see the best price, regardless of how they reach your site.